My name's Iman Barmanki, I'm Sustainability Director at Kensa Contracting. We're here at Chadwell St Mary in Thurrock, where we've just finished installing 273 Kensa Shoebox heat pumps into the 3 blocks of flats behind us. We started working with the council through the COVID pandemic, and at the time a lot of people were home working. In that time, we encouraged the council to train their resident liaison officers in fuel poverty assessments. That started a process of engaging with the residents on a one-to-one basis and understanding the true levels of fuel poverty in this area. What they found back then was that some of the residents were paying in excess of £3,000 a year for heating and hot water. Considering the low income of the demographic within social housing, especially within Chadwell St Mary, that was not sustainable, having direct impacts on affordability of rent and making harsh choices between whether you eat or heat. We built the business case with the council. We developed feasibility proposals and gave them a solution which took away storage heaters and introduced networked heat pumps, which uses the car park to get ambient energy to feed into each property. Each property has its own individual heat pumps, which means the residents are fully in control of how they heat their property and when they heat their property. Post-installation, we actually encourage residents to find the cheapest electricity tariff to further reduce their heating and hot water bills. Typically, when replacing night storage heaters, we save about 67% on energy costs for the residents. In these properties, that can equate from £500 to around £1,800. Some of the residents that we've spoken to reported that they were paying £70 a week to keep their properties warm. Post-installation, that's now dropped to £30 a week. Some of the residents were unable to have a shower before installing the heat pump system. With the mix of the Shoebox heat pump and the Sunamp heat battery that we've installed, for the first time they're able to get adequate hot water. As part of working with the council to help develop the business case, we supported the council to apply for the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. This project is one of the largest ground source heat pump projects funded through SHDF Wave 1, securing £3.2 million of funding. The council used Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund to part-fund this project. It was quite tricky to get the funding, and we had to work quite closely with both Department for Net Zero and the council to get that over the line. It just goes to demonstrate how essential funding is into social housing. There's roughly 10,000 high-rise blocks similar to these across the country. A lot of them have electric storage heaters, with residents struggling to pay for their heating and hot water. By retrofitting them with ground source heat pumps connected to ambient loops in the car park or in the green spaces, we can really lift residents out of fuel poverty, making huge savings in terms of carbon and running costs on an annual basis.
Hello, I'm Stuart Gadsden, Commercial Director of Kensa Contracting. So in the car park we have over 100 boreholes collecting the energy that goes all the way from underneath the ground to the heat pumps inside every apartment, providing the heating and hot water. These boreholes are connected together by digging trenches, and you can see here an example of a trench that's been dug, and then we've resurfaced it so that then this just becomes a car park again, and there's nothing visible for the residents at the end of it. It just becomes a simple car park that they had before. This is one of the manifold chambers that is allowing all the boreholes to be connected together, and then we have a common flow and return pipe that runs to the riser pipework. And this is the only visible example that you have of the installation outside the building. What we can see behind me is the main riser pipework, and this is taking the energy that we've collected from underground and transporting it through the building to each individual heat pump. You can see 6 pipes, and that is 3 pairs of risers. And we have a common flow and return pipe for floors 1 to 4, then for floors 5 to 9, and then finally for floors 10 to 13. So each tower block has approximately 30 to 35 boreholes connected to it, which means that each set of risers has roughly 10 boreholes connected to it. Those boreholes are collecting lots of energy. There's a heat transfer fluid within those boreholes, which is a mixture of water and glycol, and then we circulate that through the pipework, and eventually it reaches each individual heat pump, where we then transform that into heating and hot water for the residents. As part of this project, cavity wall insulation was installed into each of the 3 tower blocks. This helped to reduce the energy consumption of each apartment, thus further reducing the running bills for residents. We used a novel technique to install the cavity wall insulation. It was carried out by abseil. This prevented the need to put scaffolding around the buildings. It reduced the time for installation and minimised disruption to residents. So here we see the risers as they enter the building. These are the risers that are collecting all the ambient energy from the car park, and it's being distributed throughout the building. The risers in the back corner there are rising from the ground floor all the way to the 13th floor of the building. At each level, it then tees off, where we then feed each individual heat pump in the apartments. Now that the installation is completed, all the pipework that's coming in from the risers has now been fully boxed up, This protects it, it means that it's not open to damage, but it also means that when we're going from compartment to compartment, it's fully complying with the fire stopping regulations for the council and for the building regulations. Lateral pipework then runs across each floor and goes into each apartment, where it then runs onto the individual heat pump. So here we are, we're now in one of the completed flats at Thurrock, and we've completed 273 installations. Each of the flats has a Kensa Shoebox heat pump, which is connected to the Sunamp, which is the domestic hot water storage. The Kensa Shoebox heat pump has pipework connected from the boreholes, and that's what we saw in the car park earlier, and they run up all the way through the building. The heat pump then has the flow and return pipework that is then connected to the radiators around the apartment. There's one in each room. Those radiators running at about 50 degrees C temperature that the residents control using the thermostatic radiator valves on each radiator. System controls are very simple. We have a twin channel programmer and a dial thermostat. The residents fully in control of when the heating and hot water are on and off, and it provides 100% of their heating and hot water needs, even on the coldest days of the year. This system is really making a big difference to people's lives. It's helping to reduce their energy bills, taking them down from about £70 to £80 per week to approximately £30 to £40 a week, a real big impact taking people out of fuel poverty. Alongside that, the system is far more energy efficient than the previous electric night storage heaters, consuming a lot less electricity, which then reduces the carbon emissions. It's a fantastic installation that we're all really proud of here at Kensa.
Hi there, I'm Andy McCallum, Regional Sales Manager for Sunamp. We're here today at Thurrock Council working with Kensa Contracting, where we've installed 273 of the Thurrock Sunamp heat batteries. Using the patented phase change material within the Sunamp heat battery, we're able to have a super compact, super efficient option which can be retrofitted into properties such as these where space is a real constraint. Because there's no moving parts within the unit, it's maintenance free, and because there's no pressure within the vessel, there's no need for discharge pipe work.
Hi, I'm Nicola Richards. I'm the Capital Programme Delivery Manager. I work within housing at Thurrock Council. Really pleased to say that we've now brought this brilliant project to a conclusion. By completing it, we've managed to raise our residents out of fuel poverty and improve their living environment and well-being. It's been great to have completed this SHDF Wave 1 funded project, and we look forward to our residents being in a much better environment through the winter months to come.
I'm Diane. I've lived here since 2006 with my son Caleb, who I care for because he's got autism. The installation was so easy. They come in like 9:15 in the morning, they'd finish by 4 in the afternoon, and they'd tested it all, and then the next day they just boxed pipes in, and it was so easy, and they were so polite and like really, you couldn't fault them. I think it's going to be a lot warmer, and the hot water is like so fast compared to what we had before. Like we had storage units before, and you'd like run a bath, wash up a couple of times, and you'd have no hot water. So now we've got put like constant. Roughly with the storage heaters, and it was only warm in one room, the room you was in mainly, I had 3 on, and it was costing me like £75 a week. And the hot water is costing about £21 a week, and that's like doing the washing, that's tumble dry going, I've got a dehumidifier going as well. So cheap to run, like not getting a lot of money a week, it's really helping, really helping. The heat pumps made I'd say a really big difference, because like heating wise, when it goes on, we can put it on when we want it on and not have to wait, like flick a switch the night before, and if you didn't have no heat. The radiators have been so much neater, you know. Storage heaters were all right, but they didn't throw no heat out, as you say. I'd say by tea time, no hot water, no heat coming out of them, so you'd use like extra radiators, which would cost, so then that's when like the cost went up. And it was like, and it's cold as well, it's really cold in there, and with like wall insulation as well as the heating, should be fine, yeah. I'd say to other councils, I think it's a really good idea, really it's excellent, like for us to save money, and it's just economical as well, like for tenants, residents, and like we're in a low income like threshold here anyway, so it's really good. Send all the other councillors, I'll just talk to them, send me to their wherever and I'll tell them.
So an essential part of some of these projects is how we deliver social impact through social value. We've obviously retrofitted the building, we have installed ground source heat pumps, and that's going to have a huge social impact for residents in terms of lower running costs for the heating system. But also we found this community space that was underused and very uninviting. In consultation with the council and the residents, we found a way to bring this more into use. So we've renovated this room, we've donated some items to make it more welcoming, and essentially the council are now using this as a warm space, so that in the winter months, if some of the residents are still worried about using their heating systems and they can't afford it, they can come here and relax and have some respite, get some community cohesion going. We've also installed the community food pantry, so people donate food, and some of those residents who are struggling at the end of the month tend to come here and access some of the food that we've put in the storage cupboards for them. I'm glad to say that the council has really taken this on board, and once we leave the site, they're going to put in the community larder and maintain that going forward. They've also adopted the room to use it as a breakfast club as well, to provide free breakfast. Recent investment into Kensa from Legal & General and Octopus Energy has meant that we can start thinking about asset infrastructure investments in a slightly different way. We can help local authorities to relieve the burden of capital costs associated with large infrastructure projects, such as installing 110 boreholes into a car park. Kensa Utilities can take ownership and spread that cost over a 40-year period, effectively shifting the capital budget into a revenue budget, making it much more fundable and much more acceptable business case for local authorities.